welcome back. You are on the Q with Q for another episode of Q the Mind. This is episode 3, and today's title is When Access Doesn't Equate to Advantage. When access doesn't equate to advantage. And so first off, we've gotten off to a great start. This is episode 3. The first two have gone really well. One, we just talked about why Q the Mind exists. And last week, we looked at the cost of cheating the pace. Essentially an episode that looked at the story of a person driving next to me on the way to work and how they were just trying to take advantage of the traffic rhythms and get ahead of the flow of traffic, which only caused them, when forced, to fall further behind. And I saw this process repeat over and over again. And so we just looked at that concept to talk about how can that same behavior affect us in life. And so it's a good episode. Go back, check it out. But this week we're talking about when access isn't an advantage. It does not equate to being an advantage. It does not put you ahead. And so today's story is, I talked about the travel that I do back and forth with my son. And so because of the distance, when I pick him up from school, there are times when I'm like, you know what, I got to stop and use the restroom before we take this hour drive. And so there's a gas station that I frequent, very often. I see the owner. You kind of know how it is. You see somebody you see regularly, like, hey, you know why I'm here to use the restroom. And so this particular time I noticed the owner's car, and I'm like, man, this car's probably been here every single time I've come, but today it just caught my attention. And here's the reason why. He was driving an EV. And, you think about it, you have here the owner of a gas station who has unlimited access to gas, likely at wholesale, but yet he chooses an EV vehicle. Why is it that? Because, again, access doesn't always equate to advantage. And so it reminded me, just because something is very accessible doesn't mean that it's the most efficient choice, right? And so here you have it that, hey, I'm opting not to use this gas and go with electricity. And so it almost, thinks of, it makes me think of, all the things that we have access to on a regular basis. This was just a holiday weekend. We just got past Black Friday. And just because you have access to a sale, just because you have access to a great buy, does not mean it's something that you need to have, or something that you need to partake in, or something that you need to consume. And so I thought that it hit me, and I'm like, this is a really good podcast topic. And so that is what we're going to dive in today. And, it mirrored something much bigger for me in, how we live. We decide and we consume what it is that we feel is best for us. But a lot of that is often due to convenience, not because it is the best choice. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to look at some things, some actual data points that I thought aligned very well with this particular topic. And so, of course, we're going to dive into the 4F formula: fact, fluency, function, and freedom. So what is our fact point today? Because I'm coming with a lot of data. We live in a world obsessed with access, right? So when you think about it, fast food, fast money, what's a quick payday? We have a whole lot of different things that you can do for quick cash. Like I think about when Uber first started and when Lyft first started, you couldn't get paid right away, right? But as time went on, a lot of the users were demanding, like, hey, I need this money. I need to recoup. And so you have a lot of different platforms, from Uber Eats, DoorDash, regular Uber drivers, to where they can access the money for the work that they do in real time right away at the end of the day. So our economy has essentially become to a place where everything has become fast paced, fast access. However, it is not the most efficient. So here are a couple of data points. There's 3 in particular that I thought will really drive this point home. The first one is just looking at roughly 2 in 3 Americans. This is from Drive Research. Roughly 2 in 3 Americans eat fast food at least once per week, right? Easy access becomes routine consumption, even though we know that the long-term efficiency from a health, cost, and an energy perspective is going to wear us down. The second one that I noticed was a rise of streaming and digital leisure. This is from the Global Web Index, GWI. Consumers now average an hour and 22 minutes per day on subscription streaming platforms. When combined with social media and online video, digital consumption dominates the modern leisure of users. The easiest entertainment is becoming the default entertainment. And so we often, find like, oh, I don't have the time or I can't do X, Y, and Z, when the reality is we are being consumed very much by the phones and devices that are right in front of us, which has a lot of us very stagnant. We don't move around and we don't do things that requires work for entertainment anymore, not at a high rate. Then the last point that I thought that was really, really good, this comes from a study that Cornell University did, a peer-reviewed study, that between 2018 and 2022, U.S. consumers' online purchasing frequency increased by more than 85% across everyday categories such as groceries, books, household goods, personal items, and at the same time, the study documented a clear substitution effect. For example, if you went and did your grocery shopping online, that also was a decrease in you actually visiting the grocery store. So as one went up, the other one came down. And of course, some of these trends definitely have a lot to do with COVID and those behaviors, but us as a society have not moved back towards the way that things used to be. We have been consumed by that convenience. And I am guilty of this as well. I find myself where I used to love to get out and just go grocery shopping. For convenience sake, I'll easily just throw in a $35 order and pay the $10.99 a month to have my, groceries or items that I need delivered. Now, while this has become efficient for me in some aspects, how deficient has it become in others, right? And so those are things that I have to continue to think about as I move forward. So that's what's true, is that we lead or we live in an era where fast access is increasing. Fluency. So what deeper understanding must we develop? Efficiency is not about ease. It's about alignment. And it's very easy to be consumed that the idea, if it's easy, it's efficient. That's not true, because ease, while it may seem efficient, what is the long-term consequences? So you want to make sure that whatever that you are doing, it is also aligned. So we want it to be easy and efficient, but we also want it to be aligned. So it's not about, just using energy less. It's using energy so that way you can be more efficient in what it is that you are trying to obtain. And so we should not mistake I can for I should, right? We know that fast food is convenient and you can eat it, but should you eat it? What are the long-term consequences of it, right? We know that you possibly could take the shortcut, but should we? Or we can take the shortcut, but should we take the shortcut, right? Think about opportunities that come our way. We can chase opportunities, but is every opportunity for us? It may not be aligned with our purpose. So these are the things that we want to think about when we're thinking about like what deeper understanding do we want to develop within this context. When you think back to the gas station owner choosing EV, this is a reminder that efficiency comes from wisdom and from thinking, not just having something available to you. And so I'm sure he really thought it out and probably did his numbers like, hey, how much is my electric bill going to increase versus me even paying for the gas wholesale? So that came from a deeper thinking, a deeper process, which helped him in turn make a wise decision. Moving on to function. How do we apply this learning? So the first thing that you want to do is audit your access. Everything that you have access to that you are using, take an audit on inventory of that thing. Like, hey, am I consuming this just because it's convenient, or is it actually helping me get to the next step? Is it helping me get to the next goal of what it is that I would like to accomplish? And so, this could be the way that we're receiving information. Like when you think about social media, are we actually opening articles when we see a news posting and getting the clear details of what that is? Or are we just looking at the headline, look at the picture, looking at the comments and taking it as gold? that's something we're doing out of convenience, not out of efficiency, right? And so that is just a prime example of things that I've often seen. And so this carries over in not just information, but our habits. It carry over into our relationships. It can carry over into, simple things like work processes, right? Doing things because it is convenient or it's accessible, not because it is efficient. Now, so that's the first part of function. The second thing is to measure your energy and not your effort. Like if you were to think, of energy the same way we think of electricity, like kilowatts per hour, per unit of energy that you are using, is this helping you be more efficient, or is it creating more burnout in the long run? And so energy used up front may not always be the best output of energy in the long run. So really be thinking about like, hey, as I'm doing these things, for convenience, how is it burning my energy over time? Is this something that I'm really getting return on investment of that energy from? Then lastly, design intentional systems, right? Create a pattern that prioritizes clarity and alignment over that convenience piece. So yes, this is convenient, but this is how I will get to Z. This is my starting point at A. And because I am doing this, it's helping me get to Z this way. That way, now you're identifying this like, hey, yeah, there's a little bit of convenience here, but also there's a clear path to my outcome. So this is very important. So for the function, again, audit your access, measure your energy, not your effort. And then lastly, design intentional systems. Okay. And then freedom. What does this unlock internally? So, when you stop chasing accessibility and start choosing efficiently, you reclaim that energy. And so once you do your audit access, your access of everything that you're doing, you will begin to see like, what, this is something I'm doing just because I have access to it, not because it's necessarily something that's helping me be more efficient. Okay. And so that is our 4F formula for this. Again, what is undeniably true? We know that we live in a fast-paced era where we want things to come as conveniently and as quickly as possible. But just because that is the case does not mean that what you're doing is efficient. So you want to think about that. Then from a fluency standpoint, what do we need to go deeper in? What learning do we need to develop? That's what takes us into that function of, we just need to audit our access, right? And so be clear on what it is that you are doing from a place of convenience versus a place of efficiency. And then into that function, we have our 3: audit your access, measure energy, not effort, and then lastly, design intentional systems. So how does this align from a scriptural lens, a Robert Greene lens, and then a POS model lens? So from a scriptural lens, we're going to be in Proverbs again, this time Proverbs 3:6. And it reads, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. And so what is that saying essentially? If you're locked in spiritually and you're locked in on God and you're constantly going back to him for affirmation on, hey, is this the way that I'm supposed to be moving? Guide my steps. He'll point out consciously to you like, hey, just because you can touch that don't mean that you should. Let that go. Let's take this way, right? And so from a spiritual aspect, if you lean into that, you will not go wrong. There's even another one that doubles down in Proverbs 16:3 that says, commit your works to the Lord and your thoughts will be established. So there's multiple portions within the Bible that speaks to essentially leaning on him and he will guide you. Now, Robert Greene, from the 48 Laws of Power, Law 23, concentrate your forces. When your energy is scattered, you are unproductive. And so he teaches us that power is lost when you're all over the place. And so the efficient thinker focuses attention where it produces the most return. And so we don't want to lose power when we confuse access with advantage. So think discipline, not abundance. Discipline, not abundance. That's what is going to define that mastery. Then moving along to the POS model, the positive affirmation of self. This is going to hit social emotional learning because it creates awareness, self-awareness more so. And it can also, cause a sense of social awareness, because as you interact with others and things become accessible to you through other people, you'll see how, you respond to those types of things. But essentially, it's going to be creating awareness within yourself of like, I've been doing this just because it's available, but let me really rethink, like, why am I actually doing this? What is it helping me resolve? From a health perspective, you know, whether physically or mentally, when you do things from an efficient standpoint, it's going to help you down the line. And so again, if fast food is the easiest concept to use, but like if I'm constantly eating fast food just because I got to feed myself, I often say sometimes it's better to go hungry than to put bad fuel in your system. And so what are the long-term implications of doing that? Right. And so then lastly, from a spiritual sense, trusting that the divine timing may be a little bit slower, but it's going to come out working for you best in the end. So it's always going to be the most efficient approach. So again, SEL awareness, health, just knowing that you're going to healthy, mental or physical, you're just going to have a more sustainable outcome for yourself when you choose things from an efficient place. And then lastly, spirituality, just trusting that divine intervention is going to get you where you need to be on time. And again, from last week, you're going to arrive fulfilled. Okay. So before we wrap, you want to look at the personal plus the business development application of this. And so from a personal aspect, it's going to be simple. Our prompt this week is going to be, am I doing this because it's available or because it's aligned? Availability versus alignment. So really think about that. And then professionally, as a leader or a founder, efficiency is stewardship, right? So don't chase every tool, every client, every opportunity. Again, this is like doing just a bunch of stuff, which does not mean that it's bad, but is aligned with your mission. Okay. Build systems that maximize clarity, not capacity. Capacity will come as you gain that clarity, because then you'll move within the spaces that you need to move to drive your business, your company, your organization forward. So that is today's topic. With our closing reflection, we just simply want to touch on that sometimes the gas station owner drives an EV because wisdom knows that accessibility without discernment is just a distraction. So efficiency is not doing more. It's about doing what matters most on purpose. So today, choose alignment over availability. That's how you cue the mind. You're on the Q with Q. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will see you next week.